Saturdays she was going to Hanuman temple that side, and Sundays she used to come here. So she was just explaining that if you want to get your material desires fulfilled, you must always approach God, and you must approach God in the right way. If you don't approach God in the right way, then God does not fulfill your material desires. So I was trying to explain to her that in actual fact, what is real religion? What is real religion, or what is the topmost religion? Of course, there are many religions. There are religions which recommend that you should do this, and if you do this, you get that, and if you do X, you get Y, and so on and so forth. But what is real religion? What is real religion? Because I remember my friend's father had a heart attack and he was admitted in Bridge Candy Hospital. So when I went to see him, I said, "Why don't you pray to God? You'll get more peace of mind." He said, "I don't believe in God. Because all I know about people are they're praying to God that God give me this, God give me that." And this has turned me away from religion, because I feel that if God exists, He is certainly not sitting up over there to fulfill all our petty little desires. And he says, "My auntie does so many novenas, and she does this and she does that, and she feels that her desires are fulfilled by this saint and that saint." I don't believe in all these things. So that has turned me off religion completely. So I was explaining to this neighbors of mine the same thing that I explained to my friend's father, that what is the topmost religion? What is the topmost religion? In fact, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is clearly stated what topmost religion is. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radhok saje ahaituki apratihata yayama suprasiddhati. He doesn't say that the topmost religion is Hinduism or Islam or Jainism or Judaism or Sikhism or Christianity. He doesn't say any of those things. He says the topmost religion is that religion which helps you to develop love of God. That is the definition of the topmost religion. The topmost religion is that religion that helps you to develop love of God. That is the topmost religion. And furthermore, it says that for this religion to fully satisfy you, it must have two characteristics. That the topmost religion has got two characteristics. What are these two characteristics? One characteristic is that it should be unmotivated, and the other is that it should be uninterrupted. That it should be uninterrupted and it should be unmotivated. I remember in the last Bhagavad Gita course we had, one young lady was brought by her friend here for the course, and afterwards she was telling him that, I come from a very pious family, and it's true that we go to Nathdwara and we worship Krishna and all these things. But, she said, what I don't understand is that throughout these 7 days lectures that he was conducting, he was saying again and again and again that you must do everything for Krishna. He said, yes, we worship Krishna in the morning, we do seva in the afternoon, in the evening, we chant little bit of round here and there, but then we lead a normal life. So I said, what's a normal life? So we go out, we see movies, we watch video, we watch television, we have parties, we do all these things. So I explained to her that what is the meaning of true religion. True religion is that it is uninterrupted. What do you mean by uninterrupted? Uninterrupted means religion becomes your life. That is true religion. Religion is not 10 minutes in the morning for God and 10 minutes in the evening for God, and if you get a little time in your lunch break, you can add a 2-3 minute bonus over there. Not like that. True religion is religion that begins and ends from throughout your waking hours. It begins from the time you get up and it continues till the time you sleep. Through all your conscious moments, you are remembering God. It's not that you pray to God for some time in the morning and then turn on the TV set and you watch Hayagir for some time, forgetting all about Krishna, and then after some time you may go for a cocktail party and again you've forgotten all about Krishna, and then when you come back again you remind yourself about Krishna. No, that's not true religion. That's not the topmost religion. The topmost religion is that it is uninterrupted. That means from beginning till the end you are constantly submerged and absorbed in thoughts of God. The very food that you eat, the prayers that you say, when you go to work you are remembering God, if you are working at home you are remembering God, when you are dealing with your husband or wife you are remembering God, when you are dealing with your children you are remembering God, and nothing that is likely to make you forget God is allowed to come in your life. That is the meaning of uninterrupted. So topmost religion has two characteristics. One is it's uninterrupted. This is what I've already discussed. And the second is that it is unmotivated. Unmotivated religion is the topmost religion when it is uninterrupted. What do you mean by unmotivated? Unmotivated means that we do not ask God for anything. We do not ask God for anything. This is the meaning of unmotivated religion. But people are always asking God for something. I remember there was a song, I think it was by Aretha Franklin. Oh God, will you give me a Mercedes Benz? My friends, they all drive Porsches, I must make amends. So people are always asking God, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. But the topmost religion means you do not ask God for anything. Anything. Nothing you should ask God for. This is the definition of true religion. It should be uninterrupted and unmotivated. And what do we mean by unmotivated? The best example is given to us by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself when he comes in the guise of a devotee. And what does he say? He says, Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim kavitam va jagdish kamaye, mama janmani janmanishware bhavatad bhaktir ahaituki tvai. Na dhanam, I don't want wealth. Who in this room can say that with a clean and honest heart? I don't want wealth. He says, I don't want any wealth. Na janam, I don't want any followers. First you want wealth. When you don't want wealth, you say, okay, I have taken a religious life and now I have abandoned wealth. But now what do you want? Now you want followers. If you don't have followers, you're not happy. So he says, no, I don't want wealth, I don't want followers either. He says, na dhanam, na janam. Then you may say you don't want followers either. But what happens? Sooner or later, if you are not strict in your spiritual life, if you are not genuine at heart, you fall down. What happens? You get captivated by a member of the opposite sex. So he says, na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim kavitam. I don't want beautiful women either. I don't want wealth, I don't want any number of followers, I don't want beautiful women either. But let's say you have crossed these three hurdles. Neither you want wealth, neither you want fame, neither you are tempted by the opposite sex. Then there is still one thing that remains. And what is that thing? You pray to God that, oh God, please relieve me from this place of misery. This is dukhalayam ashashvatam. You said so yourself. This is anityam sukham lokam. This is a place of misery. I don't want to come back here. So God, please give me mukti, give me moksha. Take me to Golok or Vaikunt or wherever, whichever place that you may have in mind for me. But don't send me back here, anywhere but this world. So when you pray to God for wealth, you pray to God for followers, or you pray to God for members of the opposite sex to entertain you, or you pray to God that, okay, I don't want all these things, but God, please deliver me from this world. You want moksha. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu shows that he is rejecting all these things. He says, na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim kavitam va jagdisha kamaye, mama janmani janmanishware bhavatad bhaktir ahaituki tvai. He says, I don't want wealth, I don't want followers, I don't want beautiful women. He says, I don't even want to be liberated from this world. I simply want to come back again and again and again. I want to be reborn again and again and again so that I can serve you. So this is the example he gives of the topmost religion. That there is no desire for material things of this world, no desire for bhukti, and there is no desire for mukti either. If you don't want bhukti, you say, I want mukti. And there are those who are satisfied with having siddhi. But all these things, three things are obstacles to the development of true religion. It has been said that bhukti, mukti, siddhi, spriya yavat, pishachi ridhi vartate, tavad bhakti sukhas yatra, sukham abudhayo bhave. That if you have in your heart these three wishes, one which is desiring enjoyment in the world, one which is desiring spiritual powers or potency to perform miracles like siddhis, and the third is the desire to be liberated from this world. As long as these three wishes are seated in your heart, true religion, true love of God can never dawn in your heart. So this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, that true religion is like this. It should be completely unmotivated, even without having a desire for liberation, which is indeed a very difficult or tall order. Furthermore, it has been said in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that Anya Bhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. anukulyena bhakti uttam. It has been said that when you pursue love of God, then even the pursuit of knowledge, jnana, when we are pursuing bhakti, we want to be convinced about the philosophy, we want to hear more, we want to acquire knowledge. He says, no, reject even the pursuit of knowledge. Karmadi anavritam, even fruitive activities, reject all fruitive activities, reject all knowledge, and pursue bhakti in a pure heart. That is known as the topmost religion. So in the pursuit of God, even reject religion in the form, when it comes in the form of knowledge, or even abandon ritualistic activities, even if they are religious activities, so that you can pursue bhakti with a pure heart. So this is the meaning of absolutely devoid of all kinds of desire. So you might say that fine, it's all right. You are abandoning wealth, you are abandoning women, you are abandoning followers, you are abandoning liberation from cycle of birth and death. But look here, you want love of God, and when you have love of God, what happens? You see God everywhere. This is what is said in the Bhagavad Gita, that when you have love of God, you see God everywhere. So you are asking for the most expensive thing. That you might think that you are being without desire, but although you are imagining that you are worshipping without desire, you are actually worshipping with the topmost and the most expensive desire, to love God and see Him everywhere. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, anticipating that people will talk like this, he says in his Shikshashtika that he says, I don't even want to see you everywhere. If you so desire that you want to treat me roughly in your embrace, and if you so desire that you will not be present before me, even that I am willing to accept. Aklishva padratam pinastu mam adarshanam ma matam karotu va yatha tathava vidhatu lampato mat prananathastu sayavanapara. That, O Lord, you will always be my worshipful Lord, even if you treat me roughly in your embrace. Even if you treat me roughly and neglectfully in your embrace, I am still going to be worshipping you. Even if you make me broken hearted by not being present before me, that means I have abandoned the world, but I don't have you because you have abandoned me also. Even that I don't mind, because you shall be my worshipful Lord unconditionally. So this then is the standard of the topmost religion. The standard of the topmost religion is that it should be completely uninterrupted. Not only it should be uninterrupted, it should be unmotivated. Unmotivated for things of this world, unmotivated for acquiring spiritual powers or potencies, unmotivated with the desire for liberation. And finally, even unmotivated to the extent that you don't even mind if God Himself is not present before you, or you are not able to see God in things around you. Even that you should be willing to abandon. That is the extent to which you have to be completely free of desire. So when you explain this to people, they say, that's a very, very tall order. What can we do? You may say that your religion is like this, but then what am I supposed to do? Because my heart is filled with material desire. I have material desire coming out of my ears. In fact, the other day, one of my friends was telling me, he says it's good that we should have somebody to teach us about spiritual life. In spiritual life we should have a guru, but we should also have a guru in material life who teaches us how to make money. We should have both gurus. He was just telling me this. So what to do if you are filled with material desire? You cannot hope to achieve that standard where you are completely devoid of material desire. Then how can you match the standard of the topmost religion? As a matter of fact, we are here in this world because of material desire. So that's not surprising that all of us have material desire. In fact, it would be surprising if we didn't have material desire. Because if we didn't have material desire, then probably we wouldn't be belonging here. The fact is, we have material desire, and that's why we are here. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that we are in fact in this material world, which is 1/4 of creation. And why are we here? We are here because of material desire. And it is material desire that keeps us here. And foolish though we are, we are unable to let go of our material desires, therefore we are not able to escape from this world. We always promise ourselves life after life. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it is said that the baby in the womb offers prayers. That means all of us who have been babes in the womb, all of us offer these prayers in the womb. That, oh Lord, I am in the most uncomfortable position in my life. I am upside down, I can't move my hands or my legs, and I am held in this position for 10 months. So God, please let me out of here, and I promise you that I'll dedicate my whole life to you so that I don't have to come back in this place. But it has been stated, we come into the world from between a woman's legs and we spend the rest of our life trying to get back there. Because that is precisely what we do. We are overcome with material desire, we are overcome with lust, greed, anger, envy, illusion, madness, and sure enough we go all the way back. And next time also we pray to God that, oh God, please let me out. This time I promise you I won't break my promise. I shall always remember you throughout my life without desire, and I shall not come back to this place again. But we come back again and again and again. In fact, Prabhupada always used to give this example of how they catch monkeys. You know how they catch monkeys? They catch monkeys in a very interesting way. You keep a glass bottle fixed in the ground, and in that glass bottle you keep a few trinkets. And these trinkets, in the sunlight, they appear very attractive. And the monkey comes, he puts his hand in the glass bottle, and when he puts his hand in the glass bottle, he catches hold of the trinkets and he wants to take his hand out. But the neck of the bottle is so narrow that he can simply put his hand inside. The minute he forms a fist, he can't take his hand out. So holding those trinkets in his hand is stuck inside the bottle, and he knows he can take his hand out the minute he leaves the trinket, but he can't bring himself to leave those trinkets because he wants those trinkets. And the bottle being firmly fixed in the ground, he can't take the bottle away either. Neither can he turn the bottle upside down. And the hunter comes to catch the monkey. And the monkey sees the hunter coming, and he knows that all he has to do is simply to open his fist and he's free. That's all that he has to do. He just has to open his fist and he's free. But he just cannot open his fist. And the hunter comes closer with a noose in his hand and he's going to strangle the monkey. The monkey knows it. The monkey knows that because he's been raiding this orchard, this man has put up a trap to catch him, and now that he is caught, he's going to be strangled. And he knows also all he has to do is to leave those trinkets, and he's out, he's free. But he cannot leave those trinkets, therefore he meets death. And all of us, we are all like that monkey. All of us, we know intellectually everybody is convinced. There's nobody in this room who's not convinced intellectually that we are here because of material desire. When I said we are here because of material desire, everybody was nodding away. Yes, yes. We are all here because of material. And I also said that all you have to do to get out of here is to leave the material desire. Everybody said yes, that's true. Very true. But just like the monkey, we simply cannot let go of that material desire. Therefore, because we are not able to let go of that material desire, we will be caught again and again and again and again. I have another friend who's atheistic. He doesn't believe in God. Well, at least he was my friend until I became a devotee. Now he doesn't consider himself my friend because he thinks I have gone mad. So he was telling me, he's saying, what is the need to worship God? He's saying, what is the need to worship God? He says, everything that I have got in this world, I have got without worshipping God. Everything that I have. All that I have to do is I have to strongly desire something, and sure enough, in course of time, that desire is fulfilled. So when I can myself fulfill that desire, then what is the need to approach God and pray to Him? A very, very practical question he was asking. Why should I approach God? Because I simply have the desire in my heart, and sure enough the opportunity comes up and I work hard and I fulfill that desire. So who needs God anyway? Why do we need God? So I was explaining to him that yes, it is true that you don't need to pray to God to fulfill your material desire. You simply need to desire. And if you desire, that desire is fulfilled. But who is fulfilling that desire? God is fulfilling that desire, even if you are not approaching Him. I gave him the example. I have a young 6-year-old son, and I am a mundane father to this son. He is a spirit soul. I am not in any way connected to him except through my body and through my mind. But when my young son, he looks into the shop window and I see on his face that expression of desire, and I know that my son wants something very badly. What do? He doesn't even have to tell me, Daddy, please buy that for me. Before he knows what's happened, I've already purchased it and given it to him. Why? Because I can see on his face the desire for it. I know he wants it very badly. And therefore, out of love for him, I go and purchase it and I give it to him. So when a mundane father, I was explaining to him, a mundane father, he can be so keen to fulfill his son's desire. Then what to speak of the eternal Father? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Pita ham asya jagato, mata dhata pitama. He says, I am the father of this universe, I am the grandsire of this universe, I am the mother of the universe. So he is all three. Not only is he father and mother, but he says grandfather. Why grandfather? Because grandfathers are always spoiling their children. They know that when their grandchildren grow up to be real spoiled adults, they are not going to be around. So they don't mind spoiling them. So Krishna says, I am father, I am mother, I am grandsire. And Krishna also says, he says in the Isopanishad, he also says in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Isopanishad he says, I am seated in the hearts of all living entities and I am fulfilling their desires from time immemorial. In the Isopanishad, Krishna is saying that I am seated in everybody's heart and I am fulfilling their desires from time immemorial. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord says, what is the Lord in Srimad Bhagavatam? He says, I am seated in the hearts of all living entities and my eternal pastime is fulfilling the desires of everybody. Just see that God is fulfilling the desires of everybody. And number two, He is seated in your heart. And number three, He is your father, mother and grandfather. And we put these three things together and you know that you don't really have to worship God to fulfill your desire. Because first and foremost, He already knows your desire. He often knows your desire before you know it. Very often a desire remains in a subconscious state in your mind and you haven't even expressed it in thought, what to speak of speaking it aloud or acting to fulfill that desire. It's existing in a seed in your subconscious mind. It's called a karma bead. But the knowledge of that seed is already known to the Lord because He is seated in your heart. So Krishna knows all your desires, all your expressed desires, and He also knows your unexpressed desires. That means Krishna knows your desires before you are even aware of them, because He is in your heart. He is your father, He is your mother, He is your grandsire. Therefore He loves you more than anybody else. And simultaneously, His eternal pastime is to fulfill the desires of everybody. You ask somebody, what do you do? Somebody will say, I am a doctor, I am an engineer, I am a businessman. But what does Krishna do? Krishna says, my eternal pastime is fulfilling the desires of everybody. So Krishna has one eternal pastime, that is fulfilling everybody's desire. So is it surprising then that He fulfills everybody's desire? I was explaining to my friend. I said, yes, I know you don't believe in God. But even if you don't believe in God, God will fulfill your desire. Why? Because God considers you to be equal and me to be equal. I said, do not imagine, I explained to him, that because I believe in God and you don't believe in God, we are different in each other's eyes, in God's eyes. We are equal in God's eyes. Sometimes people think that, oh, I am a devotee, so I am at a better level than this guy who is an atheist. But in God's eyes, everybody is equal. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Suridam sarva bhutanam yajñatva mam shantim richati. That when you realize that God is equal friend of all living entities, then only you will know peace. The minute you think you are a little more favorite of God and that one is not so much favorite of God, then you cannot know peace. Only when you know that everybody is equal in the eyes of God, then only you will know peace. So God is fulfilling everybody's desires. My desires, your desires, everybody's desires. And you don't even have to pray to Him because He is fulfilling those desires without your having to approach Him directly, because He knows your desires before you know them. But, a very big but, if you fulfill those desires, or if God fulfills those desires, in forgetfulness of Him, those desires only bring you unhappiness, misery and misfortune. Please note what I said. That it is not necessary to approach God to fulfill your desires, because God being seated in your heart, He already knows your desires. But if you allow God to fulfill your desires in forgetfulness of Him, then the result is that although those desires are fulfilled, although you get what you want, you get only unhappiness, misery and misfortune. And the story that can best illustrate it is the story of the monkey's paw. I just told you about how the monkey is caught. So the story of the monkey's paw just best illustrates that. In fact, we used to have this play in our school every year we used to have this play. And in this monkey's paw, there is an old couple living in a Welsh mining town. And this old couple, they are a retired couple. And of course, in a Welsh mining town, in the days where they lived, there was no TV, no Doordarshan or any other TV. There was no newspaper, no magazine, very few books which were difficult to come by. So they had no entertainment at all. I mean, to the standard that we have today. But they had one object which was the focus of their attention. There was one person who was the apple of their eye, and that was their son. That although they were an old couple and they were retired, they had a young, handsome son, 21 years old, who was the apple of their eye, and everything in their life was centered around this son. Everything in their life was centered around this son. And while they were one day sitting at home, waiting for their son, they get the possession from a gypsy of a monkey's paw in the bottle. It's a monkey's paw, but it's severed from the monkey, so you only have the paw in the bottle. And it's given to them, telling them that if you have this monkey's paw in the bottle, with this bottle you can make 3 wishes. Any 3 wishes you can make, and those wishes will be 100% fulfilled. So both of them sit down together and they decide that since their son's birthday is coming up, they should wish for 500 pounds, because with this 500 pounds, they will be able to celebrate their son's birthday in a wonderful manner. So they sit down and they wish for 500 pounds. Nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. And 3 hours later, instead of their son coming through the door, the local manager of the mines walks in and he tells them there's been a mine collapse. And as a result of the mine collapse, your son has been completely crushed to death. And his body has been so mangled that we advise you not even to come and try to identify it. He has been completely crushed to death, and we are very sorry. And this couple is completely shattered. But before this manager goes, he tells them that in compensation we give you a check of 500 pounds. So they wanted the 500 pounds, and they wish for this 500 pounds. They've got the 500 pounds, but they've lost their son. You think that 500 pounds makes them happy? It doesn't make them happy at all. So they are completely distraught at the loss of their son. The 500 pounds means nothing to them. And 2 days later, on their son's birthday, after a quiet dinner, they are sleeping. They can't sleep at night, so they gather around the dining table. And each of them is completely torn with misery, and they decide that they still have 2 wishes left in the bottle. So let us wish that our son is alive again. So they wish that let our son be alive again. This was what they wish at night. And 2 hours later, in the middle of the night, they hear somebody crawling on the path in front of their house. And they also hear somebody banging the door and trying to talk to them in very inaudible, inarticulate voice, because they realize now that their son has dug himself out of the grave, and in that mangled body he has re-entered the dead body, and now he has dragged himself to their house and wants to come in. So once again they are absolutely disturbed, because although they want their son, they don't want their son in this condition. Once again that desire has been fulfilled, but that desire has been fulfilled in a way they don't really want. So finally, in desperation, they wish that their son was dead again. So they had three wishes. One wish, 500 pounds, they lost their son. Second wish, they want their son back. They realize they don't want their son in that shape anymore. And the third wish, they wish he was dead again. So this is the result of all desires made and fulfilled in the absence of God consciousness. Yes, God fulfills all desires. But if He fulfills desires you in absence of His consciousness, those desires which are fulfilled bring you only misery, misfortune and unhappiness. After all, what is the monkey's paw? The monkey's paw, when attached to the monkey, is a very useful thing indeed. For the monkey it's a very useful thing. But when the paw is cut off from the monkey's paw is separate from the monkey, it only brings unhappiness and misery. So also, we are a part of God, we are part and parcel of God. And when we separate ourselves from God by not remembering Him, when we separate ourselves from God by completely forgetting about Him, and we pursue our own petty desires in forgetfulness of God, then every desire of ours which is separate from consciousness of God is fulfilled like this monkey's paw. We fulfill the desires, but with every desire that is fulfilled, we get misery, misfortune and unhappiness. This is what I explained to my friend. I said, yes, your desires have been fulfilled without worshipping God, but are you a happy man? If you are a happy man, then why do you look so miserable? He said, yes, you are right, I am not a happy man. So I said, this is what I am trying to explain to you. That yes, you need not worship God, your desires will be fulfilled anyway. But although your desires will be fulfilled anyway, even if you don't worship God, those desires which are fulfilled in forgetfulness of God will bring you only misery, unhappiness. And finally you will wish that they had never been fulfilled. I have another friend, and he is a great devotee of Lord Shiva. He is a great devotee of Lord Shiva. Of course, I am also a devotee of Lord Shiva. But I am in knowledge of the fact that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by worshipping Him, you need not worship anybody else. But my friend doesn't understand that. So he was telling me, he says, I have worshipped Lord Shiva since childhood, and Lord Shiva has fulfilled all my desires. Every desire that I have, Lord Shiva has fulfilled. Don't think that Lord Shiva is called Bhola for nothing. He is easily pleased, he is Asutosh. So you pray to Him for anything, He will give it to you. And I am doing wonderfully. Just see my business. Since I have taken over from my father, I have multiplied it 4 times. I drive around in a Mercedes Benz, and I am doing so well. All by worshipping Lord Shiva. Don't you think it's time you change? He's asking me. Don't you think it's time you change? Switch over and worship Lord Shiva and you see the result. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, He explains the position of those who worship the demigods. He says, Kamaistesya rita jnana prapadyante nya devata. That those whose hearts are distorted by material desires, they worship the demigods. And he also says, Antavattu phalam tesham tadapi alpamedasham. That it is people of small intelligence who worship the demigods, because the fruits that they get, they are limited and they are temporary. I said, yes, you have worshipped Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva indeed has fulfilled your desires. But I explained to him, the fact still remains that although your material desires have been fulfilled, have you become a better person? By worshipping Him, have you become a better person? Have you lost lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness from your heart? Or has it increased? In fact, I gave him the example. I said, who do you think is the greatest devotee of Lord Shiva in history? If you look up all the historical scriptures and you try to find out who was the greatest devotee of Lord Shiva, you find out that the greatest devotee of Lord Shiva was, yes, Ravan. So I said, Ravan was the greatest devotee of Lord Shiva. And Ravan was such a great devotee of Lord Shiva that nobody has ever been able to match his devotion to Lord Shiva. And as a result of the devotion of Ravan to Lord Shiva, what did Ravan get? Ravan got Lanka, city of gold. The whole city was a city of gold. He had the most powerful army. He had the most beautiful women as his wives. This was the state of Ravan. But I asked him, although Ravan fulfilled all those material desires, in fact, Ravan, let me elaborate further, wanted to build a staircase to go to heaven. Sometime back I think there was a beat group called Led Zeppelin which had a song called Staircase to Heaven. So it was Ravan who wanted to build the original staircase to heaven. No need to perform sacrifice, just climb up my staircase and go to heaven. Furthermore, Ravan, he was so happy with the boons that were given to him by Lord Shiva that he tried to kidnap Parvati and enjoy her without Lord Shiva. This is the position of Lord Shiva. That not only he got all the material boons from Lord Shiva, but he wanted to kidnap Shiva's wife and enjoy her without Lord Shiva. This is what his mentality was. So I said, did Ravan become a better person for it? Or did Ravan become a bigger demon? So by worshipping Lord Shiva and fulfilling his material desire, did he become a better, purer, nobler, more saintly person, or did he become a bigger and bigger demon? He said, yes, it's a fact, he was the biggest demon. So I said, that is the result of worshipping the demigod. Because of demigod, they fulfill your material desire for all the devotion or everything that you do for them. But they are unable to purify your heart. They are unable to purify your heart. That although by worshipping the demigod, your material desire is fulfilled, simultaneously they are unable to purify your heart, so that what happens? You become a bigger demon. I said, on the other hand, look at the case of Dhruv Maharaj. Dhruv Maharaj wanted to have a kingdom greater than his grandfather's, and he worshipped the Supreme Lord with only that aim. But he was guided by a spiritual master who was Narad Muni. Therefore he knew whom to worship and how to worship. So being directed by Narad Muni, he worshipped Narayan. He worshipped Lord Krishna. And by the worship of Lord Krishna, by worship of Narayan, Dhruv Maharaj fulfilled all his desires. In fact, the Lord personally came to give him darshan. Lord Narayan personally came in front of Dhruv Maharaj. And coming in front of Dhruv Maharaj, he told Dhruv Maharaj that you have prayed to me and performed austerities and sacrifice and worship and devotion to get a kingdom greater than your grandfather's, and you have it. You shall have Dhruv Alok to be named after you. But what did Dhruv Maharaj say? Dhruv Maharaj told him just one thing. Dhruv Maharaj told the Lord when he saw him, he said that Sthan Abhilashi Tapaso Sthito Aham, desiring a position, a material position, I perform great austerities to see you. Sthan Abhilashi Tapaso Sthito Aham, Swam Praptvan Dev Muni Indra Bhuyam, and you who are not seen by even Indra and the great Munis, you have become present before me. Kacham Vichinvan Api Divya Ratnam, Swamin Kritharto Asmi, Varam Nayache. It's true, I was worshipping you with material desire. But now that I have seen you, I realize I was looking for broken pieces of glass, and I have now come across a jewel. So now I don't want my material desire that I asked you for. Now that I have seen you, I have no further desire for what I had asked you. Although I was worshipping you for a position, now that I have seen you and got vision of you, that desire is gone. I don't want that desire fulfilled at all. This is the result of worshipping the Lord. That yes, the Lord does fulfill your desire, but He fulfills your desire in such a way that along with the fulfillment of your desire, He also takes away the capacity to generate further desire. He fulfills your desire in such a way that although your desire is fulfilled, no further desires arise. It has been said in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Satyam dishatya arthito ninam naivartado yat punar arthito yata swayam vidate bhajatam anichatam ichha pida nam nij pada palavam. That yes, it is true that God fulfills your desire. If you worship the Supreme Lord, yes, He fulfills your desire. But He fulfills your desire in such a way that you have no further desire. How does He do that? Because although you don't want it, He gives you bhakti. You are worshipping Him for material desire. But although you are worshipping Him for material desire, although you have not asked for anything else beside material desire, He not only gives you material fulfillment of that desire, but He simultaneously gives you bhakti. And when you get this bhakti, you have no further desire. This is the nature of the Supreme Lord. That He fulfills your material desires, but He fulfills them in such a way that you have no further desires coming up. Actually, material desire is like an itch. Has anybody here had an itch? Please put your hands up. Okay, if you are feeling embarrassed, you need not do that. But I can see most of the hands went up. So everybody knows what is an itch. An itch is something that forces you to scratch. It forces you to scratch. In fact, it has been said that home is the only place where you can scratch where it itches. That's why people are fond of going home. So you scratch because it's itching you so much. And when you scratch, what happens? Pleasure. Wonderful pleasure. What release from tension. Ecstasy. Especially if you've been constrained from scratching until you reach home. After a long journey, you reach home and you scratch, and now you are in bliss. Because now you feel happy, satisfied, content. But what happens? Does that itch go away? No, sir, that itch doesn't go away. That itch comes back again. And when that itch comes back again, it comes back with greater force, it comes back with greater intensity. And so when you scratch it this time, you get greater pleasure. The greater the itch, the greater the pleasure when you satisfy it. And the more you scratch it, the more it itches. And the more it itches, the more you scratch it. And it goes on and on and on and on. So you might think, how wonderful. But what happens is that when you scratch it, sooner or later you keep on scratching a place, and what happens? It gets ulcerated. It gets infected. And after it gets ulcerated and infected, it becomes painful. So it starts with an itch which gives you pleasure when you scratch. The itch increases, the scratching increases. And eventually it becomes an open sore which is painful to you. This is material desire. Material desire is there. So you have to fulfill it. You fulfill it, and what happens? You feel good for the time being. And although you feel good, you feel that it won't come back, it comes back again. And when it comes back again, you fulfill that desire again and again and again, until finally you get pain as a result of fulfilling desire. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ye hi samsparsaja bhoga dukkha yono evate adi antvanta kaunteya na teshu ramate buddha. A wise man does not take delight in pleasures of the senses because he knows they have a beginning and an end. Therefore, he avoids them. Because fulfillment of material desire eventually brings you pain. This is material desire. Now what if you have an itch where you cannot scratch? Suppose you have an itch somewhere low down on your back, and for the life of you, you simply can't reach it. You're trying in all possible ways, but you just can't reach that itch on your back. So what do? You might try to go to the wall and try to rub it, but that's not satisfactory. You need somebody to scratch it for you. So you go to your dear friend and you tell your dear friend, please scratch my back. So what does your friend do? Sure, you're a good friend of mine. What are friends for anyway? If I'm a real friend of yours, I'll scratch your back. So he scratches your back for you. But just suppose this friend of yours happens to be a skin specialist. You think he'll scratch your back? I have a very good friend who is a skin specialist. Suppose I go to him and tell him, hey, I've got a bad itch on my back, please scratch it for me. You think he's going to scratch that itch for me? He won't scratch it for me. What he will do is he'll take a tube of ointment and he'll rub that ointment on my itch so that my itch will go away. Not only will the itch be satisfied, but simultaneously I'll never get an itch again. So that is called getting rid of that itch. So Lord Krishna is a skin specialist and your itch is a material desire. If you have an itch, you want to scratch it. But if you go to Lord Krishna and you ask Lord Krishna, please scratch my back. Will Lord Krishna scratch your back? Lord Krishna will put a wonderful ointment that will take away that itch for once and for all. But the demigods are not like that. The demigods are not like that. The demigods are there for the express purpose of fulfilling material desires. That is their position. Therefore, since they are there to fulfill material desires, their philosophy is different. You go to them and tell them, please scratch my back. They'll say, yes, I'll scratch my back, your back, you scratch mine. That's the philosophy. You worship them, you perform sacrifice, you perform devotion to them, they'll scratch your back. But itch won't go away. It will come back again and again and again and again. This is what is happening. This is what is happening in the world. People are worshipping the demigod. And as they worship the demigod for fulfillment of material desires, they get happy when their desires are fulfilled. They are ecstatic when the material desires are fulfilled. But those material desires never ever go away. They come back again and again and again. But when you worship Lord Krishna, the supreme doctor for all ills, he fulfills your desire. Please note, it's not that he doesn't fulfill your desire. Dhruv Maharaj told him, I don't want that desire which I asked you for. But what does Lord Krishna say? He says, no, you asked for it, now you better have it. Even if you don't want it now, you just have to have it. So he forces him to accept the kingdom of Dhruvalok, although he doesn't want it by now. That since you asked for it, bad luck, now you have to take it. But simultaneously he has taken away the desire for it. So it's not that the Lord, Supreme Lord, does not fulfill your material desire. He does fulfill your material desire. But in fulfilling your material desire, he sees to it that you have no further desire again. Therefore it has been said, Akamo sarvo kamo va moksha kamo udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yujeta purusham param. That whether you have no desire, akamo, you have no desire in your heart, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was saying, sarvo kamo, or you have all desires in your heart, or moksha kama, you may have a desire for liberation. In all circumstances, simply worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because that is the only way. That whether you have no desire, whether you are full of desire or you desire liberation, in all circumstances worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. My mother-in-law was telling my wife that you should be very careful in religious life. Because if you are too religious, what happens? God takes away everything from you. And especially be careful of Lord Krishna. It's okay you are worshipping Durga or Ganesh or any of these benign entities. But Krishna, he is the greatest trickster. You worship him, and before you know what's happening, he will pull the carpet from under your feet and he will take everything away. In fact, there are many people who have this idea in mind, that if you worship Lord Krishna, that's the most dangerous person to worship. Because if you worship Lord Krishna, he simply snatches things away from you. So, what is the truth behind the matter? The truth behind the matter is that it's a fact. It is a fact. Krishna takes things away from you. In fact, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna says very clearly. He says, Yasyaham anugranami harishya tadhanam shanay tato adhanam sajanti asya tva jana dukha dukhitam. What does he say? He says, Lord Krishna says, that when somebody becomes especially dear to me, and when he becomes especially dear to me, and he also has material desire, what do? I take away all that he possesses. I take away his wealth, I take away his position, I take away his name, his fame, I take away everything. And then this poor fellow, when he's got nothing left, his relatives also abandon him. When Krishna takes away everything, his relatives, his friends, everybody abandons him. And then this poor guy, now he's got nothing to depend on in the world, so he turns to me with full heart. Wholeheartedly he turns to me. So when somebody is very dear to me and he's got material desire in his heart, that's what I do. I snatch away everything from him. And then when he's got nothing else in the world, then he turns to me wholeheartedly. So this is what Lord Krishna says. So I can see many worried faces here in the audience. That up till now, this doctor has conned us. He has conned us into worshipping Krishna. But he never told us this dangerous fact. Now he's let the cat out of the bag. I can't wait till I go home and take down Krishna's picture and put Shiva and Ganesh and whatever other pictures I was worshipping in the past. So you might be thinking, doctor has conned us up till now. Now he's told us, after I've been worshipping Krishna for a long time. But don't worry, relax, smile, lean back. There's a way out of all this. The way out of all this is very simple. The way out of all this is that you can get rid of your material desire simply by spiritualizing your material desire. You might say, what's that? You don't have to wait for Krishna to take things away from you before you become serious about him. You simply spiritualize whatever desire you have. You must first of all, you must know what is the difference between matter and spirit. When you realize the difference between matter and spirit, then you will know how to get rid of material desire for once and for all. What is the difference between matter and spirit? What is the difference between Maya and Krishna? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna says very clearly. And what does he say? Lord Krishna says there that Rite artham yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta cha atmani yad vidyat atmanomayam yatha abhaso tata tamaha. He's giving the definition of Maya in this verse. It's very difficult to get definition of Maya. This is the only verse I have found in Srimad Bhagavatam which gives the definition of Maya so clearly. He says, Rite artham yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta cha atmani. He says, everything which is devoid of connection to me, that is Maya. The definition of Maya is that which has no connection to Krishna, that is Maya. Rite artham yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta cha atmani yad vidyat atmanomayam yatha abhaso tatha tama. That is Maya. So all that which is not connected to God, that is considered to be Maya. So just for example, if you take a typewriter and that typewriter is used to type out a novel, say by Harold Robbins, or maybe The Life of Pamela Bordin, what kind of typewriter is that? It's a material typewriter. But that same typewriter, if you use it to type out the Bhagavad Gita, what kind of typewriter is that? It becomes a spiritual typewriter. Same typewriter. The same typewriter, if it is used to type out something which makes you forget God, is a material typewriter. The same typewriter which is used to remind you about God is a spiritual typewriter. So it's very, very simple to spiritualize your material desire. All that you have to do is that everything that you have, you use it in the service of Lord Krishna. And if you do that, then it doesn't matter what you have. This is the secret of material desire in Krishna consciousness. The secret of material desire in Krishna consciousness is just this: knowing what is material and knowing what is spiritual. There is a story of Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish Maharaj was the king of the world. I remember when I had gone to Bahrain, I had given this lecture on learning to face death. And whatever you think of at the time of death, that you become. So somebody told me at the end of the lecture, he didn't come for the lecture, he just heard about it. If he had come for the lecture, he would have known what I said. But he met me and he told me that I heard you say that all you have to do at the time of death is you remember something and that you become. I said yes. He's saying, before I die, I am going to remember Sultan of Brunei. I said, who's Sultan of Brunei? Sultan of Brunei is the richest man in the world. So I am going to remember Sultan of Brunei before I die, and surely I will come back as Sultan of Brunei as the richest man in the world. That's what I want. That's what he told me. But King Ambarish, he was richer than Sultan of Brunei. How big is Brunei? Very small indeed. But Ambarish Maharaj, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, he was the king of the whole world. And although he was king of the whole world, he was renowned as a great devotee of the Lord. So since he was renowned as a great devotee of the Lord, everybody had him in the highest regard, because not only materially he was in a tremendous position, but spiritually also he was very exalted. So Durvas Muni was a renunciate who would abandon all material possessions to pursue God. He became jealous of him. Durvas Muni was a worshipper of the impersonal absolute. It has been said, Klesho Diktaras Tesham Avyakta Sakta Chetasam Avyakta Hi Gati Dukham Dehavad Dhiravapyate. That those who worship God in the impersonal absolute form, they will find it very tough going. It will be very painful and difficult to make advancement because they are embodied. And that was Durvas Muni's position. Durvas Muni had renounced the whole world. And having renounced the whole world, he was worshipping God in impersonal absolute form. And he felt jealous, he felt envious that here is Ambarish Maharaj, who is king of the world and is also said to be a devotee. I can't bear this. So he picked a fight with Durvas, to pick a fight with Ambarish Maharaj and to curse him, he specially arrives there. And he arrives there at a time when Ambarish Maharaj is about to break his Ekadashi fast. So Ambarish Maharaj, although Durvas Muni has come uninvited, honors him and tells him to join him in breaking the fast. So Durvas Muni says, I will first have a bath. And Durvas Muni purposely takes such a long time in the bath that the muhurt for breaking the Ekadashi fast is about to pass away. So that he will have to break it at an inauspicious time. So Ambarish Maharaj, he consults all the learned sages in the court. And the learned sages in the court, they tell him that you can have water. Because having water is neither breaking nor is it observing. So you break it by having water, and Durvas Muni need not be offended, and you can join him when he comes back. So Ambarish Maharaj has water. And when Durvas Muni comes, by his mystic powers, he understands immediately that Ambarish Maharaj has taken water. So immediately he shows his terrible temper. And cursing Ambarish Maharaj, he plucks one hair from his head and dashes it on the ground. And immediately from that hair of Durvas Muni, a huge fiery demon comes to devour Ambarish Maharaj. And Ambarish Maharaj, he just stands there with his hands folded because he is a great devotee of the Lord. He understands that all this is happening by the will of the Lord, so he humbly stands there before him. And the Sudarshan Chakra of Lord Krishna personally comes and destroys that demon to protect him. Of course, Krishna says, Kaunteya pratijanahi name bhaktya pranachiti. Those son of Kunti, declare it boldly, my devotee shall never perish. So he destroys that fiery demon with the Sudarshan Chakra, and that Sudarshan Chakra starts chasing Durvas Muni. So Durvas Muni, seeing that Sudarshan Chakra, runs for his life. And he runs through all the three worlds looking for shelter. He runs through all the three worlds looking for shelter. Then he realizes there is nothing left except to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Durvas Muni, he goes and approaches Lord Brahma. You see, because he is worshipping impersonal absolute, he doesn't know who's God. So first he approaches Brahma. He says, Brahma, O Supreme Lord, please save me from the Sudarshan Chakra. So Brahma says, I am not the Supreme Lord. Please try elsewhere. So now he goes to Lord Shiva, and he approaches Lord Shiva and beseeches him that, O Lord Shiva, Supreme Personality of Godhead, please save me from the Sudarshan Chakra. So Lord Shiva also tells him, sorry, wrong number, I am not Supreme Personality of Godhead either. You have to try elsewhere. So finally Durvas Muni takes shelter of Lord Narayana, of Krishna, and approaching him, he tells him that, "Oh Lord, now you please help me. Save me from the Sudarshan Chakra." So what do you think the Lord says? The Lord says very clearly, he says, "I am also not independent." He says, "I am also not independent. That I cannot help you. Why? Because I am also dependent." What am I dependent on? I am dependent on the love of my devotee. Although I am the Supreme Lord and Master of the universe, I am a servant of my devotee. Sadhavo hridayam mayam, sadhunam hridayam tvaham, mad anyat tva na janati, naham tebhyo managapi. In my heart there is no one but my devotee, and in my devotee's heart there is no one but me. So I am also dependent on the will of my devotee. I can't interfere in this matter. Now you have to take forgiveness from my devotee alone. So realizing that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is helpless, Durvas Muni goes and he prays to Ambarish Maharaj, that Ambarish Maharaj, please forgive me. And Ambarish Maharaj, who is king of the world, he prays to the Sudarshan Chakra and pardons him and forgives him and embraces him, because that is the nature of the devotee. So this story illustrates that on one hand we have Ambarish Maharaj, who was king of the world, and on the other hand we have Durvas Muni, who was a renunciate, who had nothing except a piece of cloth around him. But when it came to the true test, who triumphed? Ambarish Maharaj, although he possessed the whole world. Why? Because he was truly a devotee of the Lord, and there was nothing in his life that was not connected to the Lord. It has been said and described Ambarish Maharaj that Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayor. His mind was always fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. Vachansi Vaikunta Gunana Varnane. When he used to open his mouth, he used to speak only about God. Karao Harer Mandira Marjanadishu. With his hands he used to sweep the temple of the Lord. With his ears he used to hear the glories of the Lord. His legs were used in walking to the temple of the Lord and walking to places of pilgrimage. His head, it was always bowed before the presence of the deity of the Lord. His limbs were always used in touching the feet of devotees of the Lord. His tongue was used in tasting prasad that had been offered to the Lord. Everything that Ambarish Maharaj did was directly or indirectly connected to God. Therefore, although he possessed everything that might have been thought to be material, actually nothing he had was material, because everything was spiritual. So those of you who are worried that Krishna will take away everything from you, please understand that all you have to do is to see that everything in your life is directly or indirectly connected with Krishna. And if you do that, then nothing can be taken from you, because in fact nothing belongs to you. Once you give everything over to Krishna in your home, in your life, then Krishna is the caretaker of that thing. Nothing belongs to you, nothing is material anymore, it's all spiritual. So this then is the secret of it all. If you have a house, make it a temple of the Lord. Wherever you go in your house, you should remember Lord Krishna. If you have a wife, engage her in the service of Lord Krishna. If you have children, engage them in the service of Lord Krishna. If you have a job, a business, a profession, directly or indirectly engage yourself in the profession or business, remembering Lord Krishna. And in this way, constantly remember Krishna in all the activities in your life. Yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, yat juhosi dadasi, yat tapasyasi o kaunteya tat kurusva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, whatever austerities you perform, do them for me, O son of Kunti. Why do them for me? Because he says, Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru mam evaishati yukta evam atma nam mad parayana. Always think of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me. Be completely absorbed in thoughts of me. And then you shall come to me without fail. This is what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, Krishna never recommends that you should abandon anything. He says, Sanyasasu mahabhao dukkham aptuma yogata. Yoga yukta munir brahma na virenadi gacchati. If you abandon your worldly possessions, what do you get? Dukkham aptum ayogata. Because you are not already situated in divine consciousness, you will get only misery. But yoga yukta munir brahma, but by engaging yourself in acts of devotion, you will achieve the supreme without delay. This is what is said by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore he says, Chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasya matpara buddhi yoga upashrita matchitta satatam bhava matchitta sarva durgani mat prasada tarishyasi atho chetam ahankaranna sroshasi vinanchasi. Constantly think of me. Whatever you are doing, be united with your mind and your heart by thoughts of me. In this way you will cross over all obstacles of life by my grace. And in this way, by crossing over all obstacles of life and my grace, you will attain perfection. But if you think you are doing it, you are finished. If you think you are doing it, you are finished. Sometimes people think that, oh, unless you wear tilak, unless you wear kanthi mala, unless you wear orange robe, unless you shave your head, you can't become a devotee. This is not true. What is important is not your hairstyle. What is important is your consciousness. How much are you thinking of God? How much are you devoted to Him? How much are you constantly remembering Him? How much is your worship uninterrupted? And shortly, if it is uninterrupted, it will become unmotivated. It doesn't matter if you have motive now. It doesn't matter if you are worshipping God with motive now. If you are worshipping Him in the right way, shortly He will take away all motive from you. Therefore He says, Akamo sarvo kamo va moksha kamo udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether you have no desire, whether you are full of desire, whether you desire liberation, in all circumstances you worship Krishna. Because in all circumstances He will make you perfect. And in fact, other people may not know it, but we are not doing devotional life for other people. You might think that, oh, it's true, I may be trying to think of Krishna, but my neighbors, they don't know it. Who cares what your neighbors think? Who cares what society thinks? Let them imagine that you are leading a materialistic life. Just like Durvas Muni thought that Ambarish Maharaj was the most materialistic man. Who cares if Durvas Muni thought that Ambarish Maharaj was a materialistic person? Krishna knew what Ambarish Maharaj was doing. Krishna knew. Man sees another man's actions, but only God sees another man's heart. God knows what's in your heart. He knows what's in your consciousness. And it has been said, Iha yasya hare dasya karmana manasa gira nikhil aso api avasthasu jivan mukta sauchyate. Externally it might appear that you are performing materialistic activities, but in actual fact, because your mind is constantly conscious of God, you are liberated even in this lifetime. Therefore, in conclusion, I would like to tell you that always think of God. Always think of God, be completely absorbed in God. Whatever you eat, whatever you give away, whatever activities you perform, you do them for Him. And then eventually what will happen? He will take away all the material desire from your heart, even if you are presently worshipping Him with material desire. And not only will He fulfill your desire, but He will take away the propensity for other desire to arise. But if you want to make a beginning, there is only one way to make a beginning. And there's only one way to make a beginning, and there's only one way to make a beginning. Harer Nam eva kevalam. Kalau nasteva gatiram yatha. That there is chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. To purify the heart, to make spiritual progress, to get rid of material desire. Chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. And in the Kali Santarana Upanishad it has been mentioned that Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Iti Shodha Shakam Nam Kali Kalmachunashanam Nato Paratarapaya Sarva Vedesha Drishyate. That in these 16 words, all the Vedic scriptures are represented. And simply by chanting these 16 words, the goal of life, that is love of God, can easily be met. Any questions from anybody? Does anybody have any questions on material desire and God consciousness? Yes? Yes, Mr. Azhar, I know you have many questions.
You have said about the material things, but in our practical life, how we have to behave, how we have to act. Are we supposed to earn? Are we supposed to send our children to the school and give them education? Are we supposed to give them everything right from beginning in the spiritual and not for materialistic? Because by taking the name, are they going to get the food every day? Are they going to get a house in the city like Bombay? So how everybody has, because we have all our businesses, we are all engaged in our jobs. So along with the Krishna, whether we are supposed to do that, and when we make progress, when you make a material progress, I think there should be a sin, bigger sin, when you make a bigger fortune. So unless there is a sin, you cannot make a fortune, material fortune. That is what they could say.
So Mr. Ardapurka's question, as usual, was a very intelligent and thought-provoking question. His question was that should I educate my children or just tell them to chant Hare Krishna and be happy? Who is going to feed them? And is that all that we should do, or we should pursue our profession, our business, our work, or whatever it is? Or should we be totally spiritual all the time? See, try to understand what I have told you. I have never asked you to give up your business, your work, your profession. Neither have I told you not to send your children to school. I have said that simply by chanting the holy name of God and by entering into activities of Bhakti Yoga, the very activities you are performing in material consciousness will be now performed in spiritual consciousness. That means that the work you are doing, the school your children are going to, will continue. But although externally the activities will appear the same, internally your consciousness will be different. I never advise people to give up what they are doing. After all, I am hardly the person to advise anyone to give up anything. What have I given up? Externally at least. Just see what is said in the Isa Upanishad. In the Isa Upanishad it is very clearly stated. It is said that Andhatama Pravishyanti ya avidyayam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya avidyayam rataha. That you have materialism on one side and you have spiritualism on the other. One who pursues materialism, he goes into great darkness. But one who pursues spiritual life, he goes into greater darkness. He says if you pursue material life, you go into great darkness. But if you pursue only spiritual life, you go into greater darkness. But he says, Vidyam cha avidyam cha yagyas vedo bhayam saha avidyayam mrityum tirtva vidyaya amrutam ashnute. But one who pursues materialism and spiritualism side by side, he is happy in this world and in the next. Because by pursuing materialism, he benefits in this world. And when he passes death, he enjoys fully the fruits of spiritualism. So one who pursues materialism and spiritual life side by side, he is happy in this world and in the next. This is the opinion of the Isa Upanishad. These are the words of God. So nobody is telling you not to do your business, your profession, whatever it is. We are saying you simply become God conscious in that. Now you will ask me that yes, you said that only become God conscious, that's all. Is it such an easy joke? That I should suddenly, I am doing all activities in material consciousness now. Overnight I should suddenly switch over and I should start becoming spiritual consciousness? No, it's not a joke. I never say it's a joke. Neither I say it's simple. But what I am saying is that if you have determination, if you have the right guidance, you can do it. After all, that is the duty of spiritually enlightened souls who have dedicated their lives to this, simply to guide people how to spiritualize their life. And eventually God will guide you Himself from within. It has been said, Tesham satatam yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te Tesham evano kampartham aham ajnana jamtama nasham yata bhavasto at jnana deepena bhasvata. That if you are struggling all the time to be engaged in constant service to me, I will enlighten you how to come to me. If you're constantly thinking, oh God, how can I serve you? Oh God, how can I serve you? What are we saying when we chant Hare Krishna? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Oh God, how can I serve you? Oh God, please engage me in your service. So when you're praying to God, God hears the intensity, the devotion and the sincerity that you're chanting with, and He enlightens you from within. The Param Guru is seated in your heart and He will enlighten you from within. And externally, when you are ready, the Guru will speak to you from without, and when both these voices coincide, you'll know that this is what you must do. And in this way, He will guide you what you should do in your each individual's life. So without giving up anything but simply changing your consciousness, you can actually spiritualize your life and get the benefits of both material life and spiritual life. Does that answer your question?
What about the things? What about the things which are involved in this material world?
The question is, what about the sins that are involved in the material world? See, first and foremost, you must have right livelihood. Please understand this very clearly. What do I mean by right livelihood? This means that if you are functioning as a butcher, if you are working as a bartender, or if you've got a liquor distillery distributor or dealer, please, you cannot become God conscious by doing that. If you are running a matka den, or if you are a bookie at a race course, you cannot become God conscious in your profession. Excuse me, but this is the truth. But if you are pursuing a normal life, then what is there? What sinful activities you have to commit? Certain jobs you just cannot do, there's no doubt of it. But at the same time, you can pursue a normal lifestyle, and simultaneously by avoiding sinful activities you can make progress. Never imagine that by committing sinful activities you will make progress. That by cheating, lying, hoarding, stealing, backstabbing you're going to get ahead. Never. You just pursue your job, your career, your profession seriously and with sincerity, and God will give you progress. You cannot get more than your allotted due. दाने दाने पे लिखा है खाने वाले का नाम. On every grain your name is written. By trying to cheat, lie, backstab and do so many other things, you're not going to get more grain. And it's not true that behind every fortune is a great crime. Generally that might be true, but you mean Ambarish Maharaj was the greatest criminal? No, that's not true. I agree with you. Generally speaking, how people are, that is true. But it's not always like that. You have two types of wealth. You have wealth which is pure wealth, which comes from Lakshmi, and you get the other type of wealth that comes from Durga. Durga will give you perishable wealth. Lakshmi will give you eternal wealth, because she will give you not only material but spiritual wealth side by side. Sometimes people say that, oh, we perform Lakshmi Puja every Diwali, but they never worship Narayan. They perform Lakshmi Puja every Diwali, but Narayan is never worshipped. How can you expect Lakshmi to come to your house if you don't invite her husband? Just think logically. If somebody invites your husband to their house, your wife to their house, and tells the husband, please wait outside, will your chaste wife enter that house? Certainly not. Only when the husband is invited will the chaste wife enter. So also, it's not sufficient to worship Lakshmi, you must worship Narayan. Otherwise, you become like Ravan. What did Ravan want? Ravan wanted Lakshmi without Narayan. Therefore, he kidnapped Sita and left Ram behind. So what happened to these people who have Ravan-like mentalities, who want Lakshmi but don't want Narayan? Ram comes and takes away everything. Any other question?
Karma. Because according to the law of karma, whatever we get, it is the result of our acts, either past or present or future or like that.
His question is also another intelligent question. He says that if we get everything according to our karma, then where does this Lord fulfilling your desire come into it? The fact is, Lord fulfills all your desires. And the desires that are being fulfilled today are a result of your yesterday's desires. Not understood. Again, I'll explain it. See, yesterday you had some desire. So God said, fine, I'll fulfill desire. So they've been fulfilled today. Now today you are not happy with what has been fulfilled. Therefore you want more, something more, which will be fulfilled tomorrow. But all desires will be fulfilled, don't worry. And you will continue life after life fulfilling all desires in this way. Therefore it has been said that all desires are fulfilled. The fact that you have a desire in mind means that it's going to be fulfilled. You know, there's a famous story about a photographer. At that time they had these old type cameras and he took a film of a lady. And when he removed that plate and he was developing that film, he found that she had smallpox marks on the picture. So he thought the film must be spoiled. So he went to her house to tell her, please come and I'll take another picture. He found she already had smallpox. That before the smallpox marks had appeared on the face, the sensitive film had already captured the smallpox that was about to erupt. So your desires are like that. You have desires, they are actually showing up on film and tomorrow they will be fulfilled. So you ask that how come all my desires are not fulfilled? Simply because that depends on the kind of desires that you have. You have small causes code, you have session code, you have supreme code. If you have small desires, they are fulfilled easily. You want to eat something very delicious, in a very short time it will be fulfilled. I know it's already 9:30. Okay? You have little more complicated desires. They will be fulfilled a little later on. But you have some tremendous difficult desires to fulfill. Maybe you want to become Prime Minister of India. Actually, I don't know who will want this kind of job. But just suppose you have some aspirational idea like that. It will be fulfilled, don't worry, but in time to come. In time to come. So all your desires will be fulfilled, and simply because when you fulfill one desire, you want another, you will keep on coming back again and again and again. Have you understood? Yes?
Millions of people are hungry